Hey everyone, you're listening to another episode of the AER podcast. On this month's episode, we got Mike Seggelink from Graco High Performance Coatings and Foam. Mike's been with Graco for almost 3 decades and just has a ton of knowledge. And I think you guys will find this episode of the podcast really interesting, just because he knows the product and he knows the company so well. He's been our Graco rep for about 5 years now. On his second stint for about 5 years, he was previously our rep as well. So we'll just dive right into it. He's got some exciting tips and recommendations on the equipment, but he also just talks about how he got to where he is at Graco today. Before we get started on this podcast, let me tell you about air-equipment.com. We carry Graco spray foam equipment as well as other finishing equipment from brands such as DeVilbiss, Binks, Klimco, Bullard, and PMC. If you listen to this podcast, right now my listeners get a special promo code. If you use promo code AERPOD, that's AERPOD at checkout, you're going to get 10% off your first order. Keep in mind that all online orders of $50 or more also include free ground shipping to the continental U.S. So you're going to get 10% off with the promo code AERPOD at checkout, and then you're also going to get free ground shipping if you spend over $50. So it's a really good deal. And now let's dive right into it on this month's episode of the AER podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the AER podcast. I'm here with Mike Seggelink from Graco. How's it going, Mike?
Going great.
Thanks for joining me. I know,
absolutely.
Squeezing me in on a Friday morning.
Well, Fridays are normally a good day to do it, trying to wind down for the weekend.
That's good. So we jump right into it. I know Graco's a big company. What is your title, or what division are you over?
I am the Senior Area Sales Manager for Graco's High Performance Coatings and Foam Group, and I cover most of Texas with the exception of the Gulf Coast and anything below New Mexico. Also cover Colorado, not Utah, I'm sorry. That was an old past life. Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, and little sliver of Louisiana.
Cool. I mean, you've been our rep for about 5 years now? 4, maybe longer.
5 years, and actually, I first started calling on air equipment in 2007. Did that for a couple of years, and then moved on to a different division of Graco, which air equipment didn't really sell too many of their products. That's a lubrication division.
And then you came back?
Yep, did that for 5 years, was North American sales manager in that group, and came back to this group. Just needed to take a bit of a purposeful step back in my career in order to spend a little more time with my family and things like that.
Okay. And how long have you been overall with Graco?
Be 24 years on September 20th.
Wow.
Spent first 11 years with the contractor equipment division, started in Los Angeles, stayed there about 8 months before moving back to my old stomping grounds in the Pacific Northwest. Spent about 11 years in Seattle and then took a transfer to Austin, Texas in 2007 to the High Performance Coatings and Foam Group. Did that for 2.5 years and then was a North American sales manager in our lubrication products group for 5 years before returning to this group in 2015.
Great. So how'd you end up with Graco? Was it a first job out of college for?
It was actually my third meaningful job out of college. I worked for Tenneco, which is Tennessee Oil and Gas Pipeline. I worked for their automotive parts division for about 5.5 years. Started that about a year after college. And then did that for 5.5 years. Headhunter called me up and told me about Graco, and took the interview, and rest is history.
Yeah. How was it making that leap from lubrication to the high performance coatings? Did you see a big difference in the learning curve, I guess, for the equipment?
Well, since I had been there a couple of years prior to going to lubrication, it was just a matter of getting back up to speed on the products that we'd come out with since 2010. The biggest difference you see is the channel of distribution. Lubrication Products has somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,100 distributors in North America. So there's a lot of distributors. It's a very segmented market. There's no real dominant players in the market nationally. But coming back over here, the distribution tends to be more regionalized. Just due to the nature of the equipment, is more technical, so you require more local support. So it's not as plug and play as other products Graco sells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've noticed that definitely on the service side for especially the foam equipment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you really got to know what you're doing, or you can mess stuff up pretty bad.
Well, like I tell contractors when I talk to them, that the best thing they can do is buy from a local distributor, because if they're brand new into the industry, there's probably about a 95% chance something's going to go wrong in the first few weeks of operation. So it's always best to have some local support that they can either bring their rig into, or the distributor can visit them on a job site and service it. That way you're back up and running, and you're not trying to troubleshoot over the phone, because I found that trying to troubleshoot over the phone can often lead to frustration.
Right. Yes. So do you go on job sites a lot now, or not really anymore, because that's more of what us distributors are supposed to be doing, I guess? But
Graco has taken the approach that we want to own the end user, and that does require a lot of job site visits, calls on end users. Part of that is to have the focus that it's much easier for us as a company to have our products sold if they go into our distribution and ask specifically for Graco products, versus giving them an application and leaving it up to somebody to present options. It's always better to have somebody go in and say, I want Graco. So yeah, it does involve a lot of end user calls, and we do run campaigns at certain times of the year where we blitz end users, just to keep the end users in line with what Graco has, what new products Graco has in the market, or what we're looking to do in the market, or programs that we're looking to promote. So yeah, it's end user focus is a big thing for us.
Branching off of that, I would actually like to ask you a question that just popped into my head, because do you know much about the Graco Rewards? Because that's something that us as distributors have been, it's kind of hard to relay to the end user on what they kind of gain out of that.
Yeah, it's an end user program that rewards frequent purchasers of our product. They earn points based on purchases from distributors towards trips, free goods, freebies, hats, all the way. There's an entire catalog in which they can pick from. Unfortunately, I don't know if the participation in that program has been real high on the end user level. I would have to say mostly because end users are out there hustling and don't want one more thing to occupy their minds, so they tend to shove it back in the recesses of their collective thinking, and we probably don't have the participation that we'd like. But it is a good program for those that are using it. They can earn American Express gift certificates, like I said, travel, freebies. So it's a good program if it's utilized properly.
American Express gift certificates that you can use to buy more parts.
Exactly.
So sorry, that popped into my head, and we have a hard time explaining it to the end user because we don't really know much about it. And I've had a couple people ask me about it.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to talk about, because we've noticed a lot of people getting excited about those new T3 pumps. So do you know how that came to be, and then, what are the kind of the benefits of using them?
Well, part of the reason it came to be is because, one, we needed lower cost options on our transfer pumps, so we came out with a carbon steel version of the T3, which gives them the output and pressure of a T2, a little bit higher pressure than a T2, but is a little more cost effective than the T2. Another thing is that air consumption, particularly on a mobile spray rig, is of concern. And the T3 allows the operator to get adequate pressure going into the reactor with lower air consumption. So they're conserving air consumption in the process. And just because they got so many things that are running off of air in that trailer, the reactor system has a component for air. You got your agitators, you got your pumps that are running on air. So you want to try to conserve air consumption where possible. So it gives them the opportunity to do that.
Okay. And then another thing I've noticed on those, so that air motor is a Mercury Air Motor, right?
Yes. Yep.
So I've been with air equipment for going on 10 years now, and we handle the paint sprayers and the T3s. And we've never once had to repair one of those Mercury Air Motors.
Yep,
they're that solid.
Yeah, they're based off of a platform that was developed about probably 15 years ago now. That utilizes an air valve switchover on the air motor, and it's a very simple design, very bulletproof, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had any issues with them.
Yep.
So if we want to move further along, just keeping the conversation about the equipment. I know they've been around the market for a while, but the Reactor 2s, what benefits do the customer or the end user get versus the old style reactors?
Well, I think first of all, you get a lot more reportability. The Reactor 2s allow you to, there's a number of different ways in which you can monitor spraying parameters. Most rudimentary would be there's a USB port in which you can download all the spray data, and it can be analyzed. It's a very helpful troubleshooting mechanism, particularly for our tech support crew in Minneapolis. What they'll generally do is ask the end user to do a data download on their reactor. It dumps it into a CSV file, which is readable via an Excel spreadsheet. They can email that file into our tech support, and tech support is looking for anomalies in what's going on in their machines and can give them troubleshooting protocols. We were running it's called Insight. What that was, it was a remote reporting capability. It was an actual hardware add-on to the reactors that allowed the end user to monitor not just one, but all of their spray rigs. It had a GPS component to it. It allowed owners to see what their crews were doing. It allowed them to see where the crews were and whether or not the machines were running and whether they were running properly in order to ensure proper application of either foam or coatings. And then lastly, due to technology, and it's mostly the cellular technology, the Insight was based on 3G communications,
right.
And early to mid part of next year, a lot of the cellular companies are going to be shutting down their 3G towers. So as a result, we had to find a better platform in which we could allow the end user to monitor their equipment over existing technology. So what we did is we came out with an app-based program that can go on any smartphone, whether they be Android, iOS, and they can even monitor. They can monitor all of their spray rigs just like they could with Insight. This operates on 4G technology, so we got several more years of life out of that. And they continue to add reporting capabilities to that app, as well as which allows the contractor to analyze his spray data. Part of that's important is because the EPA, particularly in spray foam, is getting more into making sure.
Oh, I thought it was something on the computer.
It allows them, or the EPA is getting more into spray foam application and making sure everything's done on ratio to prevent off-gassing into living spaces. So it allows, for accountability purposes and auditability, it allows them to show a job report in all the spray parameters just to show that everything was applied per manufacturer specifications in the chemical.
Right. Okay. So if we want to circle back to the to being out in the job sites, I know the spray foam world, and I know that's not just what you cover, but that seems to be, you can see some crazy stuff out there. You have any stories about being out on the job site you'd like to share on anything you've seen?
Probably one of the, it was kind of it was a little bit of frustration on my part. I was out in seeing an end user. It was wasn't spray foam or polyurea related. It was our protective coating. So they were running a couple of our XP units, and I walked into the shop, and they were having all sorts of problems staying on ratio. And I looked at the machines, and they had 2 XP units, and they had basically containment vessels under them that had just filled up with sludge. And I said, you shouldn't need those. And he said, well, we have since the beginning, and we service our units every month. And I was thinking, well, if you service your units every month, you shouldn't have to have any type of containment vessels to catch all the stuff running out of the machine, because there shouldn't be anything running out of the machine. And to this day, I could probably walk back into that shop and they still have them. And they just maintain that they still they service those, rebuild those pumps once a month.
I guess whatever floats your boat, right?
Yep,
At
exactly,
this point.
exactly. But then you run across, particularly trying to troubleshoot over the phone. I'll get a call from a guy on a job site, and one of the funniest ones is a guy was complaining that his machine wouldn't work at all. And I don't want to belittle anyone, but usually one of the first questions I ask is your power supply on? Because when I first started with Graco, I ran across a situation where I was talking to a guy, and he was kind of looking at his system, and he kind of was like, oh, never mind, because he actually forgot to plug the unit in.
Well, that'll do it every time.
Exactly.
But man, talking over the phone, I don't do troubleshooting because I'm in sales, but Calvin, he could talk to you all day about that.
Oh, yeah.
He's actually out on service call right now. That's why he's not here.
Yeah.
But so if there's someone on the fence about choosing Graco or versus maybe a competitor, what would you say? Why should you choose Graco over someone else?
Well, since I've been with Graco, like I said, I'm going on 24 years now. Graco spends a lot they reinvest a lot in their business. I think the last I read is they plow about 4.5% to 5% of revenues back in R&D. That's about 3 times what our peer groups in the industry are. So we're constantly upgrading, trying to make systems better. The big focus for Graco is to try to build features into our equipment that allow the contractor to keep spraying. Because when I was in a previous division, we did an analysis and found out that for every $100 in repair costs on a paint sprayer, the contractor was losing about $700 in productivity. So probably taken to the next step in this type of business, it'd probably be a lot more. So what we try to do is build in features that allow easy field troubleshooting, easy repair in the field, and this is all to keep the contractor productive. Mm-hmm. Because particularly in some of these these more technology-based coatings and foam, these guys aren't going to have a spare unit just sitting around. They're stuck with that unit, and if they don't get it up and running quickly, they could be in trouble because they're going to start losing a lot of productivity. And a lot of these job sites, they got a finite window as to when they need to be in and out of the off the job site. So Graco does a great job of reinvesting in the business, putting features into their equipment. Support, we got a lot of support mechanisms. Our front lines is going to be our distribution. A lot of our distributors know more about the equipment and deal with it more regular than even I do. And so we rely on their knowledge base, and that's mainly why I tell end users to buy locally, because they're going to have that level of support right there for them.
Well, I'll toot y'all's horn a little bit too, because what I like from my perspective is if someone asks me a question that I don't know the answer to, whether I'm having to call customer service or tech support, I don't get a voicemail when I call. I talk to a person, and I get more often than not, I get an answer right then. And if they have to call me back, it might take an hour or two. But, I mean, we get answers. And then from a lead time standpoint, you guys generally have everything in stock ready to go. I mean, even if I've got a customer that needs a reactor in 3 days, and I don't have it here, I can ship it to them or bring it in here. And you got, I think I ordered one a couple weeks ago, and they shipped it out same day, and I got it 3 days later from Minneapolis. It's crazy. But
yeah, we are a world-class manufacturer, and that's one of the things we do like to tout is that, and when we bring distributors and end users or anyone else into our facilities up in Minneapolis, we like to take them on a tour of all of our facilities, because I think that it's very impressive. I mean, not only from the standpoint of the manufacturing, but just the cleanliness and the way things operate. And we're introducing a lot of robotics into our manufacturing, as well as parts picking. We got robots that we got racks that go floor to ceiling, and the robots actually go up and pick the parts and dump them into a tote, and then runs down the line and gets put into packaging and shipped out. So there's a lot of ways in which we try to reduce cost internally and try to keep our costs low, to our end users.
Great. Anything else you got? Or I think we touched pretty much everything, huh?
Yep, I think so.
All right. Before I let you go, if you guys need any high-performance coatings or spray foam parts or equipment from Graco, just call Air Equipment.
Not to mention blasting equipment.
Blasting equipment, too, yes.
Yeah.
We didn't even touch on that. Do you want to talk about EcoQuip at all?
Sure. Yeah, one of the other product lines that we've taken on over the last few years is, and it goes well with our protective coatings business, industrial grade epoxies and urethanes, is we bought a company called EcoQuip, and what it is, it's vapor abrasive blasting, which takes dry blasting, mixes it with water. The advantage of that is it reduces dust on a job site. It actually, because of the way that the media is encapsulated in water, it actually increases striking force. So you're getting a lot more, equal production to dry blasting with a fraction of the dust. We have a dust suppression report that shows about 92 to 93% dust suppression versus traditional dry blasting. Like I said, it goes well with our protective coatings, because one of the benchmarks as to how a coating actually performs is going to be surface preparation. If the surface is prepped properly, that coating will generally last for years. A case in point is I have blasted polyurea off of steel and with one of our EcoQuip units. And really, once on an improperly prepped surface, once you dig through the initial coating, it comes off in sheets. but a friend of mine he blasted a pretty good chunk of steel and put a good surface anchor profile on it, and then sprayed a polyurea on it. And I blasted that thing for probably better part of half an hour and probably only cleared a few inches off of it. So it's surface preparation is critical as far as high performance coatings, and so that it fits nicely within our line.
Great. Yeah, that slipped my mind. I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
All right. Well, Mike, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you on the next podcast.
I'm from could be anywhere, America. Population 403. Just keep it going till you see that pump jack.